take it down.
Okay.
This is your man, right? He's
Yeah.
supposed to be- I'll tell you who's good. Whoever sends us those tapes that we get, they become sensations in this country. The tapes, getting out of the planes. That's what people want to see. Respect. They want to see respect. They don't have respect. They're starting to have it here too, but they don't have the respect. Whoever does that does a great job.
Oh, we have a team, yeah.
You got a good team. Can I use them?
Yes. It's all yours.
Even the sound, you know,
Yeah.
the whole deal. It's very good.
It's like a movie. It's a movie. It's a soundtrack, but it's real. And
Cecil B. DeMille. You ever hear of Cecil B. DeMille? Great movie. The great movie, the greatest of them all. But no, it's really, and it, I would say Marco has a big impact.
yes.
It's all over. It's being played all over the place. Because they want to stop crime. They want to stop crime. Let's see what you stop crime.
It's the only way.
Let them in, please.
It's the only way.
So you're just going to have a small group, a small gathering
Yeah.
of journalists.
So we're nice.
They've got it.
Oh, okay. The ratings
The ratings, I
they haven't been paying attention. You give them the ratings, they come. Exactly. It comes with,
You know, with you have like one guy, hello. Really good. Careful, watch the Oval Office. Watch the resolute desk. We don't want it, we just sent it out first.
No.
Put it down. We don't need cameras in. That sounded like a pretty bad crash. Six fracture, you see a broken desk. Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to have a friend of mine because we went through this together and got along very well for my entire period of time. So I knew him as a very young man. Now he's just a young man, and he's done a fantastic job. Mr. President, it's an honor to have you.
Thank you.
You're doing incredibly for your country, and we appreciate working with you because you want to stop crime, and so do we. And it's very, very effective. And I want to just say hello to the people of El Salvador and say they have one hell of a president. Okay, and I mean that, and I know him well. I know him as a very young man, Marco, even younger than you. You know, he started pretty young.
He'll always be younger.
Young at heart. But I want to thank you for the great job you're doing. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
Well, it's an honor. We're very happy, and we're very eager to help. We know that you have a crime problem, a terrorism problem that you need help with. And we're a small country, but if we can help, we will do it. And we actually turned the murder capital of the world, that was the Journalist College, right? Murder capital of the world, into the safest country in the Western Hemisphere. And, you know, sometimes they say that we imprisoned thousands. I like to say that we actually liberated millions. So, you know, like,
It's very good. Who gave him that line? Do you think I can use that?
in fact, Mr. President, you have 350 million people to liberate. Yeah. But to liberate 350 million people, you have to imprison some. You know, that's the way it works, right? You cannot just, you know, free the criminals and think crime is going to go down magically. You have to imprison them so you can liberate 350 million Americans that are asking for the end of crime and the end of terrorism. And it can be done. I mean, you're doing it already. And I'm sure that people have seen the change in the streets. A long way to go because you're just initiating your second term. But it's clear that, you know, with the numbers at the border, you know, with even in Democrat-run cities, they get a help from the work you're doing. So I'm really happy to be here, honored, and eager to help.
Well, we had a terrible thing happen. We had an administration that allowed people to come in freely into our country from not only South America, but from all over the world, many from the Congo in Africa, Asia, all over the world, Europe, rough parts of Europe, and they came from prisons, and they came from mental institutions, and they came from gangs, and the gangs of Venezuela and other places, and hundreds of thousands and even millions of them came. There were 21 million people altogether, but many of the people that came, just a tremendous percentage of them were criminals, in some cases violent criminals. We had 11,088 known murderers. Half of them murdered more than one person. This was allowed by a man who, what he did to our country is just unbelievable. So we're straightening it out, we're getting them out. But what they did and what that party did to our country, open borders, anybody could come in. As soon as I heard that, I said, every prison is going to be emptied out into our country. That's what happened. And we're straightening it out, and we just had numbers. We had the highest recruiting numbers in the history of our country going into police departments. And a year ago, we had the lowest numbers. You couldn't hire a
biggest change.
Yeah. Nobody's
from
ever
the lowest to the highest.
And the military now, Marines, the Army, Air Force, Coast Guard, every slot is, I mean, we have the best numbers we've ever had. We call it recruitment numbers. And we've never had anything like it. We had records on at every single level. But very important, the policemen. The policemen are joining forces now that we really were having a hard time with policemen because we weren't protecting our police.
Yeah.
And we cherish our police. The police are great, and the firemen and everybody else. But we have the highest numbers that we've ever had, the most enthusiasm. Great enthusiasm on trade and other things. We're doing great. We're taking in billions and billions of dollars. We made, 2 weeks ago, I gave them a little bit of a pause because, you know, you have to show a little flexibility. We go back to what we have to do. The markets have been very strong once they got used to it. But we were losing $2 billion a day. There's no company that's big like this. This is the biggest deal ever made. Now we're making $3 billion a day. We're a great country, but we had stupid people running this country, and I can say it. But what they've done to us at the border should never and can never be forgotten. It's a sin, what they did, and you are helping us out, and we appreciate it. Thanks.
Actually, what you're doing with the border is remarkable. It has dropped, what, 95%? It's incredible.
Okay. As of this morning, 99%, 99.1% to be exact.
Why are those numbers not in the media?
Well, they get out with the fake news, you know, like CNN over here doesn't want to put them out because they don't like putting out good numbers. They don't like putting out because I think they hate our country actually.
Yeah,
but it's a shame. You're right. Isn't that a great question? Why doesn't the media? Why don't they put out numbers?
Yeah, 99%. I mean, it's crazy, right?
We're doing.
It's a crazy turnaround.
Christy, could you maybe say a couple of words about the border? How we're doing?
You know, it's just been absolutely phenomenal what a great leader can do. Clear direction. Our laws matter. We should only have people in our country that love us, and the Border Patrol and our ICE officers and law enforcement officers have done fantastic work. So we're proud of them. Now we just need to get the criminals and murderers and rapists and dangerous gang members and terrorist organizations out of our country. So, Mr. President Bukele, we thank you very much for your partnership. It has been wonderful for us to be able to have somewhere to send the worst of the worst and someone to partner with. And we'd like to continue that partnership because it's been a powerful message of consequences. Mr. President, you wanted people to know that there was consequences if you break our laws and harm our people and endanger families. And this is a clear consequence for the worst of the worst that we have somewhere to put them.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, we even had this gang member from Venezuela, one of the ones you sent. We interviewed him just, to get some information, etc. from them. And he said, oh, I got arrested 6 times, but they released me the 6th time, so I should be released again. And then he said, well, what's the last thing you do? And he said, well, I shot a cop in the leg, but I didn't kill him. They just shot him in the leg. And we're like, this guy was arrested 6 times here in the United States, 6 times. He was released 6 times, and in the last, no, he was released 5 times, and the last time he was sent to El Salvador, right? So he's not getting a release. But the last time he shot a cop, actually, and he shot him in the leg. So these are, you know, like you said, yeah, but it's, I mean, yeah, there's something broken.
The liberal establishment, but they're not running things anymore in this country, and we're run by, and I don't say conservative, I don't say anything, we're run by people with great common sense.
Yeah, common sense.
Because it's all common sense.
Yeah.
It's not liberal conservative, it's common sense.
Exactly.
Like, do you allow men to play in women's sports? Do you allow men to box your women and box? Because I know you have a lot of boxing.
That's violence.
That's abuse of
violence
a woman.
against women.
It's abuse of a woman.
Totally.
But we have people that fight to the death because they think men should be able to play in women's sports. And some of those sports, it wouldn't matter much, but it still matters. But some of them are very dangerous for women.
Some years ago, like I said, a decade ago or so, women rights movements were pressuring so that we enacted specific laws to avoid men abusing women. And I think those laws were great because there were a lot of men abusing women. But now some of the same people are trying to backtrack and actually trying to make new laws allowing men to abuse women in sports. So actually that doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
It's crazy. You know, they have weightlifting records, right?
Yeah.
A woman gets up this way, she's incredible. A guy gets up and beats her by 100 pounds. What are you going to do? A record that hadn't been broken in 18 years. You know, they put on an ounce and an ounce, quarter of an ounce, eighth of an ounce for 18 years. Now they have a guy come up, ping. The whole thing is crazy. But they continue to fight. And I don't like talking about it because I want to save it for just before the next election. I said to my people, don't even talk about it because they'll change. And but I watched this morning. There was a congressman fighting to the death for men to play against women in sports. And you say to yourself, why? What are they doing? What are they doing? But your country's not too big on that.
No, of course not. We're big in protecting women.
You're good. Yeah. That's right. It's a very important form of protection, too.
And as you can see, most of my cabinet are women, so...
That's impressive.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's why you
And
run.
they're not DEI hires or anything. They're just great at what they do. Right?
That's right. This is very impressive.
Yeah,
This is a first. We've had women, but we've never had 3 of them right here.
4 and 3 men.
Look at what we have. You guys feel a little bit mistreated? That's good. I like it. We've been advanced. I've been very advanced in that regard, too. We have Pam, who's been so
Yes,
fantastic.
and Christy.
Christy, and the most powerful woman they say.
I know, exactly. They're all afraid of her.
Susie Wells. Oh, she's tough. Most powerful woman in the world, according to magazines. What do I know?
Yes.
But I think she probably is.
Yeah, she probably is.
Yeah, she probably is.
Congratulations.
And you know Stephen, who's done such a great job.
Yes.
We have great
He's
people.
very famous too.
But we love working with him. He really lets them have it. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
There's no games.
No. It's very good.
He knows. Do you have any questions, please?
President Trump.
Go. Let's not start with CNN because they're just so
Mr. President.
wrong. Yeah, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. You repeatedly mentioned last night that Russia's attack on Ukraine was a mistake. What is the exact mistake? And had you given Putin a deadline to actually move toward a ceasefire?
The mistake was letting the war happen. If Biden were competent, and if Zelensky were competent, and I don't know that he is. We had a rough session with this guy over here. He just kept asking for more and more. That war should have never been allowed to happen. That war, I went 4 years and Putin wouldn't even bring it up. And as soon as the election was rigged and I wasn't here, that war started. There was no way that war should have been allowed to happen. And Biden should have stopped it. And you take a look at Putin. I'm not saying anybody's an angel. But I will tell you, I went 4 years and it wasn't even a question. He would never, and I told him, don't do it. You're not going to do it. And it was the apple of his eye, but there was no way that he would have done it. All you had to do is lower oil prices. If you lowered oil prices, Biden kept the prices so high because he made it impossible to get it. If you lowered oil prices, you wouldn't have had the war. But you wouldn't have had it with me anyway. That war would have never happened. And I think it's a great abuse. So now what do? You get a country where 25% of its land is gone, and the best locations, where millions of people are killed. You know, you haven't reported accurately the death. And this was Biden's war, and I'm trying to stop it. And I think we're going to do a good job. I hope we're going to do it. They lose 2,500 young people a week, think on average. Now they're Russians and they're Ukrainians, but it's 2,000, we don't care, it's like whatever it is. They're not from your country, they're not from mine, but I want to stop it. 2,500, it's a killing field. It's like the Civil War. You take a look, I look at the satellite pictures. This should not be happening in our time. Of course, our time can be pretty violent, as we know. But that's a war that should have never been allowed to start. And Biden could have stopped it, and Zelensky could have stopped it, and Putin should have never started it. Everybody's to blame.
Have you spoken to President Zelensky, sir, about his offer to purchase more Patriot missile batteries?
Oh, I don't know. He's always looking to purchase missiles, you know. He's against, listen, when you start a war, you got to know that you can win the war, right? You don't start a war against somebody that's 20 times your size and hope that people give you some missiles. If we didn't give them what we gave, remember, I gave them javelins. That's how they won their first big battle with the tanks that got stuck in the mud, and they took them out with javelins. They have an expression that Obama at the time, Obama gave them sheets and Trump gave them javelins. But just something that should have never happened. It's a really shame. The towns are destroyed. Towns and cities are, you know, largely destroyed. They have the spires, you know, the beautiful spires that go up. They say that we're the most beautiful in the world in Ukraine for whatever reason, but the most beautiful in the world, they're mostly laying on their side, shattered and broken. And most importantly, you have millions of people dead. Millions of people dead because of 3 people. I would say 3 people. Let's say Putin, number 1, but let's say Biden, who had no idea what the hell he was doing, number 2, and Zelensky. And all I can do is try and stop it. That's all I want to do. I want to stop the killing. And I think we're doing well in that regard. I think you'll have some very good proposals very soon.
Last question, sir. Have you attributed a motive, sir? Have you attributed a motive through the FBI investigation behind the attack on Governor Josh Shapiro over the weekend?
No, I haven't, but the attacker was not a fan of Trump, I understand, just from what I read and from what I've been told. The attacker basically wasn't a fan of anybody. It's probably just a whack job. And certainly a thing like that cannot be allowed to happen.
Good relation with President Bukele, the best guarantee that this time we won't terminate the temporary.
I have a great relationship with this man. I have the best relationship with him. We've known each other. I've known him since he was a very young man, as I said, very, very young. And I was impressed. I said, look at this guy. In fact, you sort of look like a teenager. You look like a teenager.
I don't know if that's good or bad, Mr. President.
He grew up well in the last 5 years.
Do you support the extension for nationals of El Salvador under
I support him.
status?
Do you plan to ask him?
How important is it for you to send?
Go ahead, let's hear the question from this very low-rated anchor at CB.
Thank you, President Trump. Do you plan to ask President
Low-rated.
Bukele to help return the man who your administration says was mistakenly
Which one is it?
deported? The man who was mistakenly deported to El Salvador?
Well, let me ask Pam, would you answer that question?
Sure, President. First and foremost, he was illegally in our country. He had been illegally in our country. And in 2019, 2 courts, an immigration court and an appellate immigration court, ruled that he was a member of MS-13 and he was illegally in our country. Right now, it was additional paperwork had needed to be done. That's up to El Salvador if they want to return him. That's not up to us. The Supreme Court ruled, President, that if, as El Salvador wants to return him, this is international matters, foreign affairs. If they wanted to return him, we would facilitate it, meaning provide a plane.
So will you return him, President
And
Bukele?
you are doing a great job.
Thank you,
ma'am.
President.
Stephen Miller, wait a minute. Could you just also respond to that question? Because, you know, it's asked by CNN, and they always ask it with a slant, because they're totally slanted, because they don't know what's happening. That's why nobody's watching them. But would you answer that question also?
Yes, gladly. So, as Pam mentioned, there's an illegal alien from El Salvador. So, with respect to you, he's a citizen of El Salvador. So, it's very arrogant even for American media to suggest that we would even tell El Salvador how to handle their own citizens as a starting point. As 2 immigration courts found that he was a member of MS-13. When President Trump declared MS-13 to be a foreign terrorist organization, that meant that he was no longer eligible under federal law, which I'm sure you know, you're very familiar with the INA, that he was no longer eligible for any form of immigration relief in the United States. So we had a deportation order that was valid, which meant that under our law, he's not even allowed to be present in the United States and had to be returned because of the foreign terrorist designation. This issue was then, by a district court judge, completely inverted, and a district court judge tried to tell the administration that they had to kidnap a citizen of El Salvador and fly him back here. That issue was raised to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court said the district court order was unlawful, and its main components were reversed 9-0 unanimously, stating clearly that neither Secretary of State nor the President could be compelled by anybody to forcibly retrieve a citizen of El Salvador from El Salvador, who again is a member of MS-13, which, as I'm sure you understand, rapes little girls, murders women, murders children, is engaged in the most barbaric activities in the world, and I can promise you, if he was your neighbor, you would move right away.
So you don't plan to
But the
ask for
Supreme
any help
Court's
to get
asking
it back?
to,
And
that-
what was the
is
ruling
that your
in the
position?
Supreme Court, Steve? Was it 9-0?
Yes, it was a 9-0
In our favor?
in our favor against the district court ruling, saying that no district court has the power to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. As Pam said, the ruling solely stated that if this individual, at El Salvador's sole discretion, was sent back to our country, that we could deport him a second time.
Well,
No version of this legally ends up with him ever living here because he is a citizen of El Salvador. That is the president of El Salvador. Your questions about it, per the court, can only be directed to him.
I asked
Se lo
President
liberaría al
Bukele,
presidente
what is
Bukele?
can President Bukele weigh in on this? Do you plan to return him?
Well, I'm supposed to be suggesting that I smuggle a terrorist into the United States, right?
It's always
how
there.
how can I smuggle? How can I return him to the United States? Like I smuggle him into the United States, or whether of course I'm not going to do it. It's like, I mean, the question is preposterous. How can I smuggle a terrorist into the United States? I don't have the power to return him to the United States.
so you could release him inside El Salvador.
Yeah, but I'm not releasing, I mean, we're not very fond of releasing terrorists into our country. I mean, we just turned the murder capital of the world to the safest country of the Western Hemisphere, and you want us to go back into the releasing criminals so we can go back to being the murder capital of the world? And that's not going to happen.
Well, they'd love to have a criminal, you know,
Yeah,
released into
I
our
mean, there's a fascination.
They would love it.
Yeah.
They're sick. These are sick people. Marco, do you have something to say about
Yeah, I mean, Stephen outlined it. I don't understand what the confusion is. This individual is a citizen of El Salvador. He was illegally in the United States and was returned to his country. That's where you deport people, back to their country of origin. Except for Venezuela, that wasn't refusing to take people back, or places like that. I can tell you this, Mr. President. No, the foreign policy of the United States is conducted by the President of the United States, not by a court. And no court in the United States has a right to conduct the foreign policy of the United States. It's that simple. End of story.
And that's what the Supreme Court held, by the way, to Marco's point. The Supreme Court said exactly what Marco said, that no court has the authority to compel the foreign policy function of the United States. We won a case 9-0, and people like CNN are portraying it as a loss, as usual, because they want foreign terrorists in the country who kidnap women and children. But President Trump, his policy is foreign terrorists that are here illegally get expelled from the country, which, by the way, is a 90-10 issue.
Well, Mr. President, you said that if the Supreme Court said someone needed to be returned, that you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago. And
How
they
long
said
do we
that
have to answer
it must
this
be
question
personal.
from you? Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say that?
Well, it's illegal
Why do you
disputes. I just
go
wanted to get some
over and
clarity on
over,
it.
and that's why nobody watches you anymore? You know, you have no credibility. Please, go ahead.
President Trump, thank you so much. How many illegal criminals are you planning on exporting to El Salvador? And President Bukele, how many are you willing to take from the U.S.?
As many as possible. And I just asked the president, you know, it's this massive complex that he built, jail complex. I said, can you build some more of them, please? As many as we can get out of our country that were allowed in here by incompetent Joe Biden through open borders. Open borders. You probably hear open borders and you can't even understand it because nobody can understand. Nobody smart or with common sense can understand it. So we have millions of people that should not be in this country that are dangerous, not just people, because we have people, but we have millions of people that are murderers, drug dealers. They've been allowed to come into our country by other countries that were very smart. When they heard this very low IQ president, and by the way, I took my cognitive exam as part of my physical exam, and I got the highest mark, and one of the doctors said, sir, I've never seen anybody get that kind of, that was the highest mark. I hope you're happy with that, although they haven't been bugging me too much to take a cognitive, but I did do my physical and it was released. I hope you're all happy with it. I notice there's no question, so probably you are. But the cognitive, they said to me, sir, would you like to take a cognitive test? I said, did Biden take one? No. Did anybody take one? No, not too many people took them. I said, what about Obama? Did he take one? No, he didn't take one either. I said, let me be the only one to take one. But I've actually taken them 3 times already. I like taking them because they're not too tough for me to take. But we had a great physical exam, so I know you're going to ask that. And the doctors who are total professionals. And I visited a soldier that was badly wounded, incredible soldier, lost his leg, and we spent a lot of time with him. I mean, great with his mother, and it was really a very great thing. They do a phenomenal job. I just want to say, Walter Reed, I was there for 5 or 6 hours. You were there with me. But I took a full physical, and it came out perfecto, so that's good. And she's got me for a little longer.
Would the U.S. be willing to pay for those facilities to be opened if new ones were to be built?
I'd do something. We'd help them out. Yeah, we help them. They're great facilities, very strong facilities, and they don't play games. I'd like to go a step further. I mean, I said it to Pam. I don't know what the laws are. We always have to obey the laws, but we also have homegrown criminals that push people into subways, that hit elderly ladies on the back of the head with a baseball bat when they're not looking, that are absolute monsters. I'd like to include them in the group of people to get them out of the country, but you'll have to be looking at the laws on that, Steve, okay?
How essential is it for you guys to be locking up these prisoners? And do you think more presidents should follow suit like you guys as far as taking a hard stance on crime here in the United States?
Well, I do. I think everybody has to. The president said it better than anybody. He said, you know, you have liberty and you have liberty, but to have liberty, not everybody is going to be good. And, you know, some are bad because they're sick. They're mentally deranged. They're bad.
Why do you think
then you have to take them, if you're going to have a country, you're going to have to take those people out. And we've been doing that. But this was like an unforced error, they would call it, where we had people that may hate our country, or maybe they're just stupid people. I think they're probably stupid people more so. A lot of people said they did it for the vote. But I did better with Hispanic people than they did, because I always use Hispanic. I did better. You people love me. I saw my poll numbers in your country up through the roof, right? 91%. Some people think they do it for the vote. But they don't have to do it for the vote. They cheat, you know, they're professional cheaters. That's about the only thing they do well. So we just have had a great relationship, and it's become bigger because of a strange thing that happened. You know, I came back. We had no war in Ukraine. We had no war we had no October 7th Middle East problem. We had nothing. We had no inflation. We didn't have the Afghanistan most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. The Afghanistan, not withdrawing, because I would have been, you know, I had it all set to bring people out with dignity and pride. That was the worst, most embarrassing moment in the history of our country, Afghanistan. We didn't have any of that. You wouldn't have had the war with Russia, Ukraine. You wouldn't have had the Middle East problem because Iran was broke. They had no money because we had secondary sanctions on and lots of other sanctions. And now every single thing our problem with Iran, but I'll solve that problem. That's almost an easy one. We got to solve a war that should have never started, Ukraine and Russia, and we'll get that solved. And we have to solve problems, and we already solved inflation. You know, if you look at the numbers are incredible, actually. Stock market's up, and we're not letting other countries take advantage of this country like they have for the last 40 years. So thank you very much. You have a question, please?
Mr. President, thank you so much. You scored another major investment win this morning when NVIDIA pledged to build its AI supercomputer, the first time ever, right here in the United States.
Thank you. Now that's a question I like. That's true.
What is your reaction to this announcement, sir, and how will this positively benefit Americans across the country?
Well, it's one of the biggest announcements you'll ever hear, because NVIDIA, as you know, controls that almost the entire sector, which is one of the most important sectors in the world, between chips and semiconductors and everything else. And they're the biggest. And the other biggest we already have coming in and spending $300 billion, as you know. They announced 2 weeks ago. But NVIDIA is so highly respected. And this was an announcement that a lot of people, I knew it was going to happen, but not to the extent that it happened. It's big. And the reason they did it is because of the election on November 5th and because of a thing called tariffs, as I say, the most beautiful word in the dictionary. After love, God, relationship. The press actually hit me. I said, tariff is the most beautiful word in the dictionary. What about family, love, God? So I got hit even on that. You understand? I said, okay. So now I say it's my fifth most favorite word because they get you on anything. But no, that NVIDIA, it's one of the great companies of the world. Modern, super modern companies, controls segments that nobody, you know, sort of controls the world in a sense, and they're coming in here in the biggest way with hundreds of billions of dollars. Not like millions of dollars, hundreds of billions of dollars, and I'm honored by it. And I want to thank Jensen and all of the people that we deal with. They're great people, they're brilliant people. And without tariffs, they wouldn't be doing it. Thank you very much.
Are you considering additional sanctions against Russia after their latest attack? And do you have an update on the rate and when you might announce them?
Well, I already have sanctions on Russia. I put them there. If you remember, Nord Stream 2, that's the big pipeline that goes through Europe. I stopped it. That's Russia's pipeline, the largest pipeline, I think, in the world. Goes to Germany. And I stopped it. And when Biden came in, he approved it. And then they say, oh, I'm friendly with Russia. No. Putin said, you know, if you're my friend, I'd hate to see you when you're my enemy. I stopped the biggest economic job they ever had. I stopped it cold, right? It was dead. You know that, right? And Biden came in and he immediately approved it. What was that all about?
Sanctions, sir?
And it's a pipeline that takes care of a lot of the needs. Now, you know, it was a very controversial thing, but I stopped it, and Biden approved it. Question?
On tariffs,
No, not you. Not
today on semiconductor tariffs and potentially pharmaceuticals.
What?
Semiconductor tariffs and potentially pharmaceuticals.
Pharmaceuticals we're going to do. We don't make our own drugs, our own pharmaceuticals. We don't make our own drugs anymore. The drug companies are in Ireland and they're in lots of other places, China. And all I have to do is impose a tariff. The more, the faster they move in. The higher the tariff, it's very serious. It's inversely proportional. The higher the tariff, the faster they come. And yeah, we're going to be doing that. That's going to be like we have on cars. We have, as you know, a 25% tariff on cars. We have a 25% tariff on steel and aluminum. And that's what that category fits right now.
Do you have a percentage in mind and a timeline?
I have a timeline, yeah, not too distant future. We're doing it because we want to make our own drugs. We're doing it because we want to make our own steel and aluminum, lumber, other things. And they're all coming in. We have record numbers, $7 trillion. Since I announced, like a month and a half ago, since I came in, we have over $7 trillion being invested in the country. We didn't have $1 trillion. We didn't have $500 billion for some of these guys. I didn't know what the hell they were doing. So we have the largest investment that we've ever heard of, and we're only 2 months in. And that'll continue at levels that you've never seen before. It's what's going to happen. And even the stock market's up today. It's we also had, you know, a lot of people didn't say it the way it was. We had the largest gain in the stock market in history on every single category last week. That was a nice game because we're getting a little, because people didn't understand the power of our economic, our country economically, if you use it right. Do you have something to say on that, JD?
Yes, sir. I mean, look, for 40 years we have lost manufacturing capacity. Workers have seen their wages stagnate. And some of the most critical things that we need, from the pharmaceuticals, the drugs that we give to our children, the antibiotics that we give to our kids, to the weapons that we actually need to fight a war, if God forbid we had to fight a war, we don't make enough of that stuff. And so President Trump ran explicitly on changing that. Yes, as the President mentioned, it caused a little bit of disruption in the market, but I actually think over the long term, workers are going to benefit, stocks are going to go up, American businesses are going to benefit as we reinvest and reindustrialize our country.
And the auto workers and the Teamsters and all of the unions, you know, not traditionally Republican, but I'm winning those unions by, we're up 40, 50 points on the Democrats. They're losing everything. They're losing everything because they just have policies that are not believable. They fight for policies that are 5% popular, and nobody knows who the 5% are. I mean, nobody can find the 5%. But if you go back to Ohio, and by the way, we have the great championship team from Ohio coming in today, right?
Very big day.
And that's going to be a little bit later. And that'll be, if you want to stick around, I'll introduce you. You'll see some very large people, right? You'll see some people that even you have not seen people like this. These are big, these are 6'7", 380 pounds with no fat. Okay, that's pretty good. But the team, the national championship team, is being honored today at the White House, so that'll be exciting. If you're around, you want to stay around, I'll have you up there. You can tell them all about your prison, how you have to behave.
Mr. President, businesses that want clarity, how
Who else?
temporary are those exemptions?
Go ahead, please.
You said yesterday that you're making a decision on Iran very quickly.
Yeah.
What do you mean by that? Is that a decision?
Well, they have to solve their problem very quickly. Iran wants to deal with us, but they don't know how. They really don't know how. We had a meeting with them on Saturday. We have another meeting scheduled next Saturday. I said, that's a long time. You know, that's a long time. So I think they might be tapping us along. But Iran has to get rid of the concept of a nuclear weapon. They cannot have a nuclear weapon. He can't have a nuclear weapon. Nobody can have, we can't have anybody having nuclear weapons, you know? We can't have nuclear weapons. And I think they're tapping us along because we're so used to dealing with stupid people in this country. And I had Iran perfect. You had no attacks. You would have never had October 7th in Israel, the attack by Hamas, because Iran was broke. They were stone cold broke when I was president. And I don't want to do, I want them to be a rich, great nation. The only thing is, one thing, simple. It's really simple. They can't have a nuclear weapon. And they got to go fast because they're fairly close to having one. And they're not going to have one. And if we have to do something very harsh, we'll do it. And I'm not doing it for us, I'm doing it for the world. And these are radicalized people, and they cannot have a nuclear weapon.
Does that include a potential strike on Iranian nuclear facilities?
Of course it does.
Just a follow-up question, a clarification. You mentioned that you're open to deporting individuals that aren't foreign aliens, but are criminals, to El Salvador. Does that include potentially U.S. citizens fully naturalized Americans?
If they're criminals, and if they hit people with baseball bats over their head that happen to be 90 years old, and if they rape 87-year-old women in Coney Island, Brooklyn, yeah, that includes them. What, do you think there's a special category of person? They're as bad as anybody that comes in. We have bad ones, too. And I'm all for it. Because we can do things with the president for less money and have great security. And we have a huge prison population. We have a huge number of prisons, and then we have the private prisons, and some are operated well, I guess, and some aren't. But he does a great job with it. We have others that we're negotiating with too. But no, if it's a homegrown criminal, I have no problem. Now, we are studying the laws right now. Pam is studying. If we can do that, that's good. And I'm talking about violent people. I'm talking about really bad people. Really bad people. Every bit as bad as the ones coming in. And I made the statement when I heard about this a long time ago now, 4 years ago. When I heard that this guy was having open borders, I said every single criminal from all over the world is going to be dumped into our country. And that's what happened. Jails. The jails of the Congo were emptied out. The jails of Venezuela were emptied out. And you know what happened? Their crime went way down. But now Venezuela has other problems. You know what the problem is? They have no money.
Yeah.
Because I shut off their oil, and we put secondary tariffs because they're not doing what's right over there. They know what to do. We spoke to them. I spoke to them. They know what to do. But they have no money. Venezuela has no money. But Iran had no money. And Iran behaved so beautifully. And then Biden took all those secondary tariffs and tariffs on. I told China, you can't buy oil. If you buy oil from Iran, China, I told it to President Xi, then we no longer want you to do business with the United States of America. And those ships disappeared from the harbor so quickly. China. Get along great with China.
Are the talks with Iran productive? Do you want to continue that?
What?
The talks with Iran, do you believe those are productive? Do you want to continue that?
I think Iran could be a great country as long as it doesn't have nuclear weapons. If they have nuclear weapons, they'll never get a chance to be a great country. They will never get a chance. It won't even come close.
Sir, on tariffs.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Yesterday you mentioned short-lived product exemptions. Which specific products are you considering, and how long is short-lived? Weeks, months?
I'm looking at something to help some of the car companies where they're switching to parts that were made in Canada, Mexico, and other places, and they need a little bit of time because they're going to make them here, but they need a little bit of time. So I'm talking about things like that.
What about any Apple products, other cell phones?
Look, I'm a very flexible person. I don't change my mind, but I'm flexible. And you have to be. You just can't have a wall and you'll only go. No, sometimes you have to go around it, under it, or above it. There'll be maybe things coming up. I speak to Tim Cook. I helped Tim Cook recently, and that whole business. You know, I don't want to hurt anybody, but the end result is we're going to get to the position of greatness for our country. We're the greatest economic power in the world if we're smart. If we're not smart, we're going to hurt our country very badly. We lost with China over the Biden years trillions of dollars on trade. Trillions of dollars. And he let them fleece us. And we can't do that anymore. And you know what? I don't blame China at all. I don't blame President Xi. I like him. He likes me. I mean, you know, who knows? Who the hell cares?
Do you have any updates on
But you know what? What?
Do you have any updates with talks with China?
No, let me just tell you this. I don't blame China. I don't blame Vietnam. I see their meeting today. Isn't that wonderful? That's a lovely meeting. They're meeting like trying to figure out how do we screw the United States of America. Don't forget, the European Union was formed to do just that. The European Union was formed to hurt the United States and on trade. And they get us on NATO because they don't pay their bills. But now, since I got involved, they have been paying their bills. I took in over $600 billion for NATO. Nobody took in anything. I mean, we were all delinquent. They had 8 nations out of 28 paid their bills. The rest of them were way delinquent. And I said, if you don't pay your bills, we're not going to protect you anymore. And the money poured in over 600. The Secretary General last week made that statement. He said, I've never seen anything like it. We couldn't get anybody to pay because the United States was footing the bill for NATO. Well, we got hurt there, and we got hurt on trade, likewise, European Union. And they've got to come to the table. And they're trying to. They're trying to. But the European Union has taken terrible advantage. They don't take our food products. They don't take our cars. We have millions of their cars, BMW, Volkswagen, Mercedes-Benz, many others. They come in by the millions. They don't take. There are no Chevrolets in Munich, I can tell you that. I said to Angela Merkel, and when she was there, as she was letting millions of people infiltrate Germany, which was not so good from, we would call them illegal immigrants, but she made them legal. But I said to her, and I got along with her very well, I said, how many Chevrolets do we have in Munich or Frankfurt? Why, none, Donald, none. I said, you're right. And yet we take in millions and millions of cars. No, those days are over. Okay, thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Head out the door. Thanks, guys. Let's move out. Thank you. Thank you, press. Thank you, press. Move out. Thank you. Out this door. Thank you, press. Let's go. Let's go. Thank you. Let's go. Let's go.
Gracias, bueno.
De lo que ocurrió dentro de la oficina oval en la Casa Blanca, este encuentro histórico, una fecha histórica en la que el presidente Nayib Bukele sostuvo esta reunión tan importante, acompañado de sus ministros, la embajadora, la secretaria de Comunicaciones, dentro de la Casa Blanca con el presidente Donald Trump, el secretario de Estado Marco Rubio, el vicepresidente J.D. Vance. Parte de los temas que se han hablado, bueno, el mismo presidente Donald Trump mencionaba, tienen un presidente genial, un mensaje para los salvadoreños sobre pues la popularidad que goza el presidente Nayib Bukele, como ya sabemos, uno de los líderes mejor evaluados por parte de los salvadoreños. También mencionaba, este es el momento de las mejores relaciones. Él mencionaba que tiene excelentes relaciones con el presidente Nayib Bukele y pues obviamente se muestra a través de esta reunión. Es uno de los pocos líderes que se ha reunido con el presidente Donald Trump acá en la Casa Blanca durante su segundo mandato. Sabemos de que ya habían tenido un encuentro previo hace algunos años y en esta ocasión ha sido recibido con todos los honores acá en la Casa Blanca, en la capital de los Estados Unidos. El presidente Nayib Bukele mencionaba, El Salvador era la capital mundial de los homicidios. Ya sabemos durante 2016 un récord de criminalidad que existía en el país y cómo a raíz de la llegada del presidente Nayib Bukele a la presidencia en 2019, esta espiral de violencia ha ido decreciendo gracias al éxito del Plan Control Territorial implementado por su Gabinete de Seguridad y por supuesto el régimen de excepción que se ha aprobado en coordinación con la nueva Asamblea Legislativa. Está dando como resultado estas cifras de criminalidad que se han reducido en nuestro país. También el presidente Bukele mencionaba, los Estados Unidos tienen un problema con la criminalidad, tienen un problema con el terrorismo que El Salvador puede ayudarles a resolver. El Salvador puede darles alguna ayuda porque ya lo ha logrado, ya ha tenido éxito esta estrategia de seguridad en El Salvador y también respondía a algunas de las críticas que se han realizado con anterioridad. Muchos hablan de que se han encarcelado a cientos de personas, pero la realidad, dice el presidente Bukele, es que se han liberado a miles de salvadoreños de las garras de la criminalidad en nuestro país y por supuesto este modelo exitoso con medidas probadas y soluciones que han dado resultado está también al servicio de la Casa Blanca acá en los Estados Unidos. También escuchábamos parte de los detalles, ¿no? Cómo el presidente Bukele elogiaba la reducción en las cifras de migración en la frontera sur de los Estados Unidos, un tema que tal vez no ha sido muy retomado por los medios internacionales, pero que sin duda ha acaparado también esta parte de la reunión y el presidente Bukele celebraba que el presidente Trump haya reducido la migración irregular en más del 90%. Parte de los temas que se han tratado en esta visita histórica, una reunión que ha durado pues un poco más de una hora o cerca de una hora y que sin duda ha tenido la atención de los medios internacionales, una sección de preguntas y respuestas en la que también se abordaban temas domésticos de la política estadounidense, pero que no ha pasado por alto la importancia de este encuentro, el combate a la criminalidad, tanto en El Salvador como el apoyo que se está recibiendo de parte del gobierno del presidente Nayib Bukele a esta segunda administración del presidente Donald Trump. vamos a esperar qué es lo que ocurre en el desarrollo de esta agenda. Sabemos de que dentro de la oficina oval, como decíamos, está el ministro de la Defensa y el ministro de Seguridad, así como también la canciller y la embajadora de El Salvador acá en los Estados Unidos, por supuesto la secretaria de Comunicaciones, y sin duda va a haber una agenda posterior a este encuentro en diversas instituciones acá en los Estados Unidos, donde se va a profundizar esta cooperación, se va a estrechar este vínculo entre ambos países, cómo El Salvador está pues siendo ya un referente, cómo está siendo punta de lanza para brindarles también algún tipo de soluciones al gobierno de los Estados Unidos y mostrar el camino de cómo ha sido exitoso en El Salvador este modelo. Nosotros nos encontramos a un par de metros de la Casa Blanca, está cercado, como pueden observar, el acceso peatonal debido a que posterior a esta reunión, pues el presidente Nayib Bukele se desplazará desde la Casa Blanca hasta la Casa Blair, que es el lugar donde se hospedan los dignatarios que vienen y visitas oficiales que se alojan acá en Washington, D.C.
Definitivamente, familia, definitivamente un éxito total la llegada del presidente Nayib Bukele, como ha sido recibido oficialmente en la Casa Blanca. La verdad que ha sido un enorme recibimiento el que ha podido tener el presidente Nayib Bukele junto a todo su equipo de trabajo, ¿verdad? Ahí lo escuchábamos, ahí lo veíamos desde su llegada. Así que saluditos, familia, gracias por estar en esta transmisión en vivo, por estarnos acompañando desde un inicio, desde que hemos comenzado esta transmisión en vivo y en directo para cada uno de ustedes, ¿verdad? Saluditos, bendiciones, y justo en este momento vamos a compartirle también un poquito sobre lo que fue esta llegada del presidente Nayib Bukele hacia la Casa Blanca. Le vamos a hacer un breve resumen para los que no han podido estar desde un inicio. Bueno, comentarles, el presidente Nayib Bukele fue recibido esta mañana, ¿verdad? Esta mañana así fue recibido el presidente Nayib Bukele por el presidente de los Estados Unidos, Donald Trump. El mandatario salvadoreño Nayib Bukele a su llegada a la Casa Blanca, donde ambos han sostenido, mejor dicho, una reunión para poder abordar temas bilaterales, ¿verdad? Entre ellos, pues, la seguridad, la economía, el asunto de nuestros hermanos en el exterior, así como también las distintas deportaciones que se han seguido dando, ¿verdad? Así que así era recibido el presidente Nayib Bukele junto a su homólogo Donald Trump, y por supuesto el saludo a la prensa antes de ingresar a la oficina oval. Este fue el ingreso del presidente Nayib Bukele hacia la oficina oval. Y bueno, estas son algunas de las imágenes ya dentro de la oficina oval, donde de las primeras palabras que el presidente Donald Trump estrechó al presidente Nayib Bukele al nomás sentarse en esa silla, le dijo que le enviaba un saludo a todos los salvadoreños, y quiero decirles que tienen un presidente fuera de serie. Esas fueron las primeras palabras con las que el presidente Donald Trump abrió lo que fue esta breve reunión que duró aproximadamente una hora. Fue junto a todos los medios de comunicación, que ya muchos de ustedes estuvieron ahí pendientes, observando, de distintas cadenas. La verdad que hoy, pues, todas las cadenas noticiosas de habla hispana, así como también de habla inglés y de muchos otros idiomas, estuvieron muy, pero muy pendientes de todo lo que estaba sucediendo allá en la oficina oval de la Casa Blanca, ¿verdad? Así que bueno, el presidente Nayib Bukele ha sido ya recibido por el mandatario estadounidense Donald Trump ya dentro del salón oval de la Casa Blanca, y por supuesto reunido con todo el equipo de trabajo, los más altos rangos, ¿verdad?, del equipo de trabajo del presidente Donald Trump, así como también el presidente Nayib Bukele, llevando todo su gabinete oficial para esta gran reunión. Y ahí podemos ver la cantidad de medios de comunicación, locales como internacionales, que también ya estaban ahí. El presidente Donald Trump también le dijo: señor presidente, es un honor contar con su presencia. Creo que está haciendo un gran trabajo, increíble por su país, y por supuesto agradecemos trabajar con usted porque desea detener la delincuencia, y nosotros también, expresó el presidente de los Estados Unidos, Donald Trump, dentro de sus primeras palabras que compartían, ¿verdad? Así también se refirió y dijo: es muy efectivo, y quería saludar al pueblo de El Salvador y decirles que tienen un presidente excepcional, y lo digo en serio, y lo conozco bien, lo conozco desde muy joven, expresó el mandatario de los Estados Unidos, ya que ha venido obviamente siguiendo todo lo que es la línea, ¿verdad? La línea de trabajo, la línea política que el presidente Nayib Bukele ha estado trabajando en nuestro país. Reconocemos que nuestro país viene a ser el país más violento del mundo, y por ende, al ser el país más violento del mundo, era obvio que estábamos en el ojo del huracán, lastimosamente, no para lo bueno, sino que definitivamente para lo malo. Así que bueno, qué bueno que el presidente Nayib Bukele, y gracias a su excelente trabajo, está siendo reconocido ahora no solo localmente, no solo en el área de Centroamérica, sino que ahora también por uno de los hombres más poderosos del mundo, que en este caso es el presidente Donald Trump, el cual pues sabemos de que no está muy acostumbrado a elogiar a gente, ya que goza de un enorme ego y de una enorme aceptación a través de sus distintas redes, por ser un presidente pues muy único, ¿verdad? Versátil y muy diferente a todos los que ha tenido los Estados Unidos de Norteamérica. Pero bueno, la verdad que no se pudo quedar, guardar sus palabras, y al contrario expresar, ¿verdad? La visita del presidente Nayib Bukele a los Estados Unidos es una muestra más de la influencia hemisférica del mandatario salvadoreño, y que ahora está gozando del reconocimiento gracias a su gran liderazgo, y por supuesto de grandes líderes como lo es el presidente Donald Trump, ¿verdad? Desde la Casa Blanca, el presidente Donald Trump también dijo: nos pasó algo terrible, teníamos una administración que permitía la entrada libre de personas a nuestro país, no solo de Sudamérica, sino de todo el mundo. Muchos del Congo, de África, de Asia, de todo el mundo, de Europa, de zonas rurales de Europa, expresó el presidente Donald Trump en esta rueda de prensa. Además también se mencionó y dijeron, y venían de prisiones, de otras instituciones, de pandillas, de las pandillas de Venezuela y de otros lugares, cientos de miles, incluso millones llegaron, pero muchos de los que llegaron, un porcentaje enorme, eran delincuentes, en algunos casos muy violentos, explicó el presidente Donald Trump en esta rueda de prensa, ¿verdad? Que compartieron junto al presidente Nayib Bukele y a muchísimos medios internacionales. También el presidente mencionó y dijo: teníamos 11.088 asesinos conocidos, la mitad de ellos asesinaron a más de una persona. Esto lo permitió un hombre cuyo daño a nuestro país es simplemente increíble, explicó el mandatario Donald Trump junto al presidente Nayib Bukele. El presidente Nayib Bukele expresó: es un honor, estamos muy contentos y con muchas ganas de poder ayudar. Sabemos que tienen un problema de delincuencia, un problema de terrorismo con el que necesitan ayuda de nuestro país y obviamente del Gabinete de Seguridad y Justicia, el cual encabeza el presidente Nayib Bukele, comandante general de las Fuerzas Armadas de El Salvador, y bueno, por supuesto, el artífice de que ahora el país goce y sea el más seguro del hemisferio occidental. El salón de la oficina oval de la Casa Blanca es el lugar donde ahora se ha celebrado la reunión del presidente Nayib Bukele y el mandatario estadounidense. Ante la presencia de muchos medios salvadoreños e internacionales, así como también locales, es como se ha llevado esta reunión. Así que también se mencionó y dijo: estamos solucionándolo, tenemos un grandísimo entusiasmo por el comercio y por otras cosas, nos va a ir de maravilla, indicó el presidente de los Estados Unidos en cuanto al tema de seguridad y de economía, el cual han tratado con el presidente Nayib Bukele y le van a seguir dando aún más, ¿verdad? Nos está ayudando, dijo también, y te lo agradecemos, gracias. De hecho, lo que están haciendo con la frontera es notable. Ha disminuido, ¿qué? Un 95% es increíble. De acuerdo, a partir de mañana el 99%, el 99.1% para ser exacto, porque no salen de esas cifras. ¿Por qué no salen esas cifras en los medios?, preguntó el presidente Donald Trump. Bueno, porque se difunden con noticias falsas, expresó el mandatario de los Estados Unidos al presidente Nayib Bukele durante el encuentro en dicha Casa Blanca. Además también hablaron y dijeron, éramos un gran país, pero teníamos otra gente al mando. Lo que hicieron es un pecado. Presidente Nayib Bukele nos está ayudando y te lo agradecemos. Muchas gracias, enfatizó nuevamente el presidente Donald Trump. Y ahí podemos ver, mira, la gran procesión, no de Semana Santa, sino que siguiendo los distintos medios internacionales para poder tener en primera plana a través de los distintos canales la reunión entre el presidente Nayib Bukele y su homólogo de los Estados Unidos, Donald Trump. Esto ha representado un encuentro histórico que posiciona a El Salvador en el mapa geopolítico mundial. Definitivamente ha sido una reunión muy sustanciosa, muy exitosa, y ni hablar los diferentes tópicos, temas que van a seguir platicando a medida que pase el día. El mandatario de los Estados Unidos, Donald Trump, destacó la excelente relación e inmejorable que sostienen ahora junto al presidente Nayib Bukele. Además, agradeció su respaldo en diferentes temas de interés binacional, expresó durante esta reunión. Por supuesto, también se hizo mención que esta visita oficial consolida las alianzas estratégicas entre El Salvador y los Estados Unidos y por supuesto refleja el reconocimiento internacional hacia el liderazgo de su excelencia nuestro presidente Nayib Armando Bukele Ortiz. Así como también durante la reunión del presidente Nayib Bukele en Casa Blanca, el gabinete de gobierno del presidente Donald Trump explicó cómo El Salvador y los Estados Unidos sostienen fuertes, pero fuertes relaciones diplomáticas de cooperación en distintas áreas. ¿Por qué no mejor decirlo? En todas las áreas en las que se van a poder ayudar y se van a poder compartir. En el caso del presidente Nayib Bukele, en el tema de seguridad para los Estados Unidos, y en el caso de los Estados Unidos el tema de la economía, que es, recuerden, la bandera con la que el presidente Nayib Bukele en este segundo periodo que está llevando a la cabeza de la presidencia es su bandera, y es con lo que él quiere también alcanzar el objetivo, levantar la economía de nuestro país y, por qué no decirlo directamente, de las familias salvadoreñas. La influencia del presidente Nayib Bukele definitivamente se ha expandido en el hemisferio. Su visión centrada en los resultados ha captado la atención de líderes internacionales que ven a El Salvador y por supuesto al presidente Nayib Bukele, gracias a su materia de política y seguridad, como un ejemplo a seguir e imitar para sus países a los cuales representan, ¿verdad? También se mencionó en la reunión, sabemos que tienen un problema de delincuencia, un problema de terrorismo con el que necesitan de nuestra experiencia, de nuestra ayuda. Por supuesto, somos un país muy pequeño, pero que sí podemos ayudar, claro que podemos ayudar y que lo haremos. Y de hecho, pues transformamos la capital mundial de los asesinatos a un país de ciudades seguras, de que ahora nos encontramos como uno de los países más seguros del hemisferio occidental, expresó el presidente Nayib Bukele en el momento que compartía junto a su homólogo, el presidente estadounidense Donald Trump. Así también el presidente Nayib Bukele siguió los distintos dijo también, somos un país, aquí nos quedamos. El presidente Nayib Bukele también reiteró ante la prensa internacional que gracias al excelente trabajo de seguridad, millones de salvadoreños han podido recuperar la libertad. Así que bueno, el presidente Donald Trump esto lo vio con mucho agrado, ya que él también se refleja de que lo que se ha podido hacer en El Salvador se llegue a hacer en los Estados Unidos. Definitivamente esto va a ser algo nunca antes visto. Sabemos que la región de los Estados Unidos ha sido muy golpeada últimamente por el tema de la delincuencia, del terrorismo. En fin, el presidente Donald Trump tiene muy claro lo que quiere trabajar, y qué mejor de hacerlo de la mano del presidente Nayib Bukele, al cual lo recibió en esta visita oficial en una clara evidencia que el país continúa marcando la presencia en la política internacional y con resultados obviamente tangibles, ¿verdad? Resultados tangibles. El presidente Nayib Bukele ha sido recibido y bueno, hubieron muchas risas, hubieron mucha confianza, hubieron muchos abrazos, muchas estrechadas de mano y por supuesto muchos elogios, tanto del presidente Donald Trump como del presidente Nayib Bukele, ¿verdad? Entre las palabras que más se destacan, que es un honor, estamos muy contentos y con muchas ganas de ayudar, expresó el presidente Nayib Bukele. Sabemos que tienen un grave problema de delincuencia, un grave problema de terrorismo, y con la ayuda de nuestro equipo de trabajo, sabemos que el presidente Nayib Bukele le expresó a Donald Trump que saldrán adelante. Sí, también el presidente Donald Trump dijo: señor presidente, es un honor contar con su presencia, creo que está haciendo un enorme trabajo increíble en su país y obviamente agradecemos poder trabajar con usted ya que desea detener la delincuencia y nosotros estamos en la misma línea, expresó el mandatario. Estamos esperando también una rueda de prensa que se va a dar y esperamos que se pueda dar en las próximas horas.
Está viendo la cámara de afuera.
Aquí estamos esperando ya la salida del presidente Nayib Bukele, si no me equivoco. El presidente Nayib Bukele ya ha finalizado el encuentro en la Casa Blanca y tenemos aquí ya imágenes que nos llegan en vivo y en directo desde la Casa Blanca, así que vamos a compartirla, vamos a ver si logramos captar momentos en que el presidente Nayib Armando Bukele Ortiz va a ser despedido de este encuentro en el que se ha llevado en la Casa Oval, allá en la Casa Blanca. Así que estas imágenes son en vivo y en directo, familia, exclusivas para cada uno de ustedes que aún se han quedado aquí apoyándonos en esta transmisión que hemos comenzado desde muy tempranas horas de la mañana, para que ustedes estén al tanto de todo lo que está sucediendo allá en Washington, ¿verdad? Sabemos que se vienen muchas más reuniones, pero lo que es la reunión en Casa Oval ha finalizado y ya estamos a la salida. Para poder ver el momento justo, exacto, en que su excelencia, nuestro presidente Nayib Armando Bukele Ortiz sale de Casa Presidencial de los Estados Unidos, la conocida como la Casa Blanca, ¿verdad? La Casa Oval, y se va a dirigir también al hotel donde se hospedan la mayoría de los mandatarios cuando son invitados gracias al presidente Donald Trump, en este caso siendo el primer presidente de Latinoamérica en ser invitado a la Casa Oval. Así que ya estamos con imágenes en vivo y en directo. Por favor, familia, demos like. Por favor, no se vayan sin dar su like, no se vayan sin dar compartir, sin dar su me gusta. Agradecerle a todos los que nos están apoyando, gracias a los que nos agradecen a través de Chivo Wallet, a través de PayPal, a través de Zelle. Bueno, ahí les hemos dejado un mensaje fijado, y por supuesto a los que nos van a estar dejando también su apoyo a través del botón de gracias. Aquí abajo está un botón que dice gracias, así que muchas gracias a los que van a estar ahí dejándonos su apoyo. Esto nos ayuda para que podamos crecer en nuestro canal, para que nos apoyen al crecimiento de su canal y así también podamos estar dándoles y llevándoles las noticias de primera mano. Ahí ya se acercan, se ven movimientos, así que esperamos que en los próximos segundos aparezca el presidente Nayib Bukele siendo ya despedido de la Casa Blanca, de la Casa Oval, donde se ha reunido junto a su homólogo el presidente Donald Trump, así también como todo su alto equipo de trabajo, ¿verdad? Todos y cada uno de sus grandes personalidades del gabinete de Donald Trump, así como también el presidente Nayib Bukele ha llegado con todo su gabinete. Entre ellos veíamos imágenes como la secretaria de Comunicaciones, así también veíamos a la ministra de Relaciones Exteriores, la embajadora de El Salvador en Washington, perdón, así como también veíamos al ministro de Seguridad y Justicia, al ministro de la Defensa, entre algunas de las grandes personalidades del equipo del gabinete del presidente Nayib Bukele y del gabinete de Donald Trump. Veíamos también ahí a la secretaria nacional de Seguridad, así como también al vicepresidente de los Estados Unidos. Veíamos también a Marco Rubio, quien también estuvo hace unos días, fue recibido tanto en Casa Presidencial como también en la casa del presidente Nayib Bukele, así como también en el lado de Coatepeque, donde pudieron compartir diversos temas de los que ahora pues ya están siendo más que evidentes. Y ahí vemos el momento en que sale ya el equipo de comunicaciones, fotógrafo y camarógrafo del presidente Nayib Bukele, así que esperamos que en los próximos segundos el presidente Nayib Bukele se asome hacia esa puerta. Así que gracias Frine Arevalo, muchísimas gracias por haber estado pendiente desde el inicio. Usted de las primeras en llegar, Delcy Ramírez, gracias Ramón Pineda, mi brother. Gracias también ahí a cada uno de todos los que han estado siguiendo esta transmisión en vivo y en directo. José Murcia, María Cubillas Maradiaga, también saludos y bendiciones para Sandy Gómez y Ana Carpio. También para Napoleón Reyes, que nos apoyó a través de la Chivo Wallet. Alba Pérez, que nos apoyó también a través de PayPal. Saluditos a Elisa Ponce, a Sonia Chávez. Gracias por haber estado en esta transmisión en vivo y en directo. Estamos ya en los últimos minutos de esa transmisión, ya solo esperando el momento exacto en que Su Excelencia el presidente Nayib Bukele abandone la Casa Blanca y se dirija, ¿verdad?, a su hotel de descanso, que está aquí cerca, muy cerca de la Casa Blanca, donde por lo general se hospedan siempre la mayoría de los mandatarios que son invitados. En este caso el presidente Nayib Bukele siendo el primer mandatario invitado, ¿verdad?, del área de Latinoamérica. Saludos María Mansor, muchas gracias por haber estado en vivo y en directo. Sonia Chávez, Alonso Rivera, José Flamenco, saluditos Lorena Escobar. Así que he saludado a la mayoría que estuvieron ahí pendientes de nosotros y a los que no se reportaron, pero sabemos que estaban ahí también viéndolo. Muchas gracias, ¿verdad?, por habernos acompañado. Los que nos vayan a ver en original diferido, por favor, ayúdennos dejando su like, ayúdenos también con el botón de gracias que está aquí abajo de cada uno de nuestros videos. Toda su colaboración es muy bien recibida. Muchísimas gracias de antemano a los que Dios ponga en su corazón, ¿verdad?, y a los que nos vayan a estar apoyando a través del botón de gracias. Muchas gracias por compartir de lo mucho que Dios les bendice. Muchas gracias por ayudarnos al crecimiento de nuestro canal, ¿verdad?, por su fiel sintonía, por su fiel apoyo. Y aquí estamos familia, en vivo y en directo desde la Casa Blanca, desde la oficina oval, esperando ya el momento en que el presidente Nayib Bukele abandone lo que han sido esta excelente, ¿verdad?, muy nutrida reunión junto a los más altos mandatarios, acompañados de, obviamente, el presidente Donald Trump a la cabeza junto al presidente Nayib Bukele. Así que ya solo estamos esperando el momento en que dé la salida y estaremos cerrando la transmisión. Muchísimas gracias a todos los que nos estuvieron viendo en el en vivo, a los que nos quieran apoyar a través del super chat también, ya lo saben, ahí está un símbolo en forma de dólar, de $1 en adelante, ahí nos pueden enviar sus calcomanías, sus palabras de ánimo o algún mensaje que quieran darle al presidente Nayib Bukele, y por supuesto lo pueden hacer a través de los superchats, así como también a través de la caja de comentarios, que para eso está. Ya casi, familia, ya casi vemos el momento exacto, en vivo y en directo, en el que el presidente Nayib Armando Bukele Ortiz saldrá de la Casa Blanca. Esperamos pues a lo largo del día poder tener aún mucho más información de lo que se logró hablar en privado. Sabemos que hay muchos acuerdos que obviamente se deben de platicar, ya que son temas muy importantes y obviamente en su debido momento van a ser compartidos a través de los distintos medios, de las distintas redes y por supuesto de los distintos canales de YouTube. Así que aquí estamos, ya solo esperando, familia, de que el presidente Nayib Armando Bukele Ortiz salga por esa puerta y pueda también despedirse del presidente Donald Trump, así como también de todos los medios que hemos estado pendientes desde su arribo, desde su llegada, lo que ha sido esta exitosa reunión, lo que lastimosamente ya no pudimos escuchar, pero en su momento lo sabremos por viva voz del presidente Nayib Bukele. Y obviamente pues ojalá y el presidente Nayib Bukele también nos dé una cadena, ¿verdad?, para poder compartir los distintos temas de los que se platicaron y a lo que se llegaron. Así que ojalá ahí se nos pueda dar a compartir los distintos temas que se llevaron a cabo y que obviamente fueron la plática central de esta excelente reunión en la que vimos a ambos mandatarios muy contentos, ¿verdad? Yo los vi muy a gusto y bueno, eso no cualquiera, familia. Recuerden que el último que salió de ahí no salió en buenos términos, así que qué bueno que Dios le ha dado sabiduría, brillantez mental, carisma, elocuencia y gracias a nuestro presidente Nayib Bukele y a todo su gabinete para poder salir y decir que ha sido muy exitosa, que ha sido muy beneficiosa esta reunión allá en la Casa Blanca y que obviamente pues esperamos tener pronto la primicia de cuáles fueron los temas bilaterales que se trataron y a qué acuerdos pudieron llegar, que lastimosamente las preguntas que vieron de los distintos medios de prensa no pudieron escucharse ya, ¿verdad? Pero que sabemos que en su momento se van a estar compartiendo a través de las distintas redes. Así que bueno, familia, ya estamos a breves minutos de poder cerrar esta transmisión. Solo esperamos la salida del presidente Nayib Bukele, ya que estas señales que estamos teniendo son en vivo y en directo, familia. En vivo y en directo esta señal que tenemos, ya que ya ha finalizado el encuentro en la Casa Blanca del presidente estadounidense Donald Trump junto a su homólogo, el presidente Nayib Bukele, donde sostuvo una reunión aquí en la oficina Oval, en la Casa Blanca, y la verdad pues diversos temas se han tocado. Los que no han podido ver la transmisión, les pido después denle en rewind el video y véanlo desde un inicio, por favor. No se olviden de dejar su like, no se olviden de dejar sus comentarios aquí abajo también. Y obviamente hoy en la noche vamos a estar transmitiendo, vamos a estar haciendo un resumen aún más ampliado, vamos a estar recibiendo sus llamadas en vivo y en directo para que también nos comenten qué les pareció esta reunión, cuáles fueron las sensaciones que a cada uno de ustedes les deja este primer encuentro, un encuentro ya oficial, ya que sabemos de que es el primer mandatario del área de Latinoamérica en ser invitado oficialmente a la Casa Blanca. Así que bueno, hoy en la noche estaremos haciendo un programa, así que pendientes, si aún no se ha suscrito al canal, suscríbase, active la campanita y por favor, familia, estar pendientes. Hoy en la noche, 9 de la noche, hora de El Salvador. Hoy en la noche, 9 de la noche, hora de El Salvador, vamos a estar transmitiendo en vivo y en directo, para que ustedes también nos puedan dar sus feedback, su retroalimentación de cuáles fueron sus sensaciones, que qué les pareció este encuentro, cómo vieron al presidente Nayib Bukele, cómo lo vieron desenvolverse, vieron ustedes que hubo empatía, vieron ustedes que hubo algún detalle, algún cliché ahí que se nos haya pasado y que obviamente va a ser bueno poder compartirlo, ¿verdad? A través de las llamadas. Así que bueno, ya anoten el número de teléfono, ahí está dejado en pantalla, en la caja de diálogo donde dice puedes apoyar el canal a través de Chivo, ¿vale? Ahí está nuestro DUI, por PayPal, ahí está nuestro link, solo le da clic y desde $1 adelante nos puede apoyar, así como también a través de las remesas por Western Union, MoneyGram, y por supuesto aquí abajo están nuestra cuenta del Banco Agrícola por si les hace más fácil, o a través del Super Chat. Ahí está el símbolo de dólar y de $1 adelante nos apoya al crecimiento de nuestro canal. Desde ya muchas gracias, que Dios les bendiga por cada una de las bendiciones, por supuesto por compartir de lo mucho que Dios les bendice a ustedes. Así que bueno familia, ya estamos a breves segundos de ver salir al presidente Nayib Bukele de la Casa Oval, donde recordemos el presidente Donald Trump envió un gran saludo a los salvadoreños y mencionó y dijo, quiero decirles que tienen un presidente fuera de serie, el presidente Donald Trump. Y además también le dijo, es un honor tenerlo aquí en la oficina Oval y sobre todo agradecerles por ese entusiasmo de querer colaborar en materia de seguridad en cuanto a este tema que está afectando mucho a nuestro país. Fueron parte de las palabras, ¿verdad? También mencionó el presidente Donald Trump, tengo una excelente relación, mejor dicho, inmejorable con el presidente Nayib Bukele, ya que lo conozco desde que era muy joven. Y la verdad, pues, me ha impresionado y me impresiona cada vez más el enorme trabajo que está realizando en el país El Salvador y por supuesto estos lazos de hermandad que se han extendido, ya que gozan de muchos temas en común, ¿verdad? Sobre todo de querer hacer su nación cada vez más grande, ¿verdad? El presidente Donald Trump también le mencionó y le dijo, presidente Nayib Bukele, es un honor tenerte aquí, agradezco lo increíble que estás haciendo por tu país, apreciamos mucho el poder trabajar contigo, porque quieres detener el crimen y en eso eres muy efectivo, expresó al presidente Donald Trump. El presidente Nayib Bukele le dijo de que están a las órdenes de poder compartir todo lo que sea necesario para que también la nación de los Estados Unidos de Norteamérica pueda salir adelante en cuanto al tema de seguridad, ¿verdad? En el marco de esta visita oficial de los Estados Unidos, el presidente Nayib Bukele también firmó el libro de honor en la Casa Blanca. Esto es una tradición protocolar que simboliza el respeto mutuo entre las naciones y por supuesto el reconocimiento oficial por parte del gobierno estadounidense al gobierno salvadoreño, ¿verdad? El presidente Nayib Bukele también dijo, bueno, ahí podemos ver ya imágenes, ahí viene saliendo el ministro de Defensa, el ministro de Seguridad y Justicia, los fotógrafos oficiales, camarógrafos oficiales del presidente Nayib Armando Bukele Ortiz. Todo apunta a que en breves segundos veremos la salida. Ahí va la embajadora de El Salvador en Washington, Milena Mayorga. Al parecer a alguien se le cayó una cora, el camarógrafo salió corriendo a recogerla. Y ahora vemos también a la secretaria de Comunicaciones saliendo. El presidente Nayib Bukele está a punto de salir en los breves minutos, en breves segundos. Veremos al presidente con mayor aceptación, no solo a nivel nacional, sino que a nivel mundial. El presidente Nayib Armando Bukele Ortiz. Imágenes que nos llegan en vivo y en directo desde la Casa Blanca en esta visita oficial. Estamos en vivo y en directo, familia. imágenes inéditas, en vivo, en directo, desde esta reunión que se ha sostenido en la oficina oval, presidente Nayib Bukele junto a su homólogo Donald Trump. Ya hemos visto salir al equipo de trabajo del presidente Nayib Bukele, ministro de la Defensa, ministro de Seguridad y Justicia. Oh, falta la ministra de Relaciones Exteriores, creo que se ha quedado dentro. Hemos visto salir a la secretaria de Comunicaciones del presidente, así también como la embajadora de El Salvador en Washington. Que ya casi familia vemos la salida del presidente Nayib Armando Bukele Ortiz en vivo y en directo desde la oficina oval allá en la Casa Blanca. El Servicio Secreto de Seguridad de los Estados Unidos está también tomando posición. Y ahora vemos con ustedes la salida del presidente Nayib Armando Bukele Ortiz.
President Bukele, how was your meeting with President Trump, sir? How was your meeting with President Trump? Can you expand on that, please? Repeat, por favor.
El clásico saludo del presidente Nayib Bukele. Y ahí vemos la salida del presidente Nayib Armando Bukele Ortiz frente a todos los medios de comunicación locales e internacionales, y va abandonando y va gracias a la seguridad del Servicio Secreto de los Estados Unidos de Norteamérica. Así que bueno, familia, así fue, eso es todo. Muchísimas gracias, familia. Gracias, mille grazie. Gracias por haber estado en esta transmisión en vivo y en directo, familia. Así que agradecerle a todos los que estuvieron conectados, a los que nos van a ver en esta transmisión en original diferido. Y hacerles la breve y atenta invitación a que nos podamos ver hoy en la noche, a eso de las 9 de la noche. Vamos a estar en vivo y en directo, así que por favor, familia, estén con nosotros, no se pierdan nuestro programa, activen la campanita, suscríbanse al canal si aún no se ha suscrito. Y ya saben, soy su servidor y amigo Elenilson Calderón, y me despido como siempre. Cuídate mucho y chao.